Sham Saradava Nalalidaloka Tranaya Karuna Gana Ganatam Sham Saradava Nalalidaloka Pranaya Karunya Gana Ganatam Prapta Sakalyana Gunanavasya Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Prapta Sakalyana Gunanavasya Vande Guru Shri Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Charanara Vrindam Vande Guru Shri Charanara Mahaprabhu ki Tana Nitya Gita Vaditra Madhyam Manasura Se No Romanchakam Pasru Taranga Bhajo Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Shri Vigrahara Dana Nityanana Shringaratanama Diramajanado Shri Vigrahara Jukta Sabaktam Sa Niyunjatopi Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Vande Guru Shri Chaturvidha Shri Bhagavat Prasada Satana Triptam Hari Bhakta Sangam Chaturvidha Kritvaiva trupti bhajata sadeva Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Bhajata sadeva Shirarikama Davayara Para Madhurya Leela Guna Rupanamna Shirarika Madhurya Leela Pratikshana Dhanalalupasya Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Ne Kunjayono Rati Kelisidyai Jayali Vere Joktir Apekshaneya Nikunjayona Tatrati Daksha Oti Valavasa Bande Gorashi Charanara Vrindam Oti Valavasa Bande Gorashi Saksha Dharitena Shamasta Shastri Ruktastatthava Vyataeva Sadhavi Saksha Dharitena Shamasta Shastri Ruktastatthava Kintu Praborja Priya eva tasya Vande Gorashi Charanara Vrindam Yasya Prasada Bhagavat Prasada Yasya Prasada Nagati Kutapi Yasya Prasada Bhagavat Prasada Yasya Prasada Nagati Kutapi Dhyayam Stubham Tasya Yasa Trinsandhyam Vande Gurashi Charanara Vrindam Vande Gurashi Charanara Vrindam Vande Gurashi Charanara Vrindam Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namo Namaste Sarasvate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunavadi Pachatyare Shatarine Nirvishesha Shunavadi Pachatyare Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Shri Chaitanya Gauranga Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Nityananda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Gadadara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Haribo. Hare Hare, Hare Ram. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hariyaraye Namah Krishna Jadavaye Namah Jadavaye Madhavaye Kesavaye Namah Gopal Govindaram Shri Madhusudan Giridhari Gopinath Madana Mohan Shri Chaitanya Nityananda Shri Advaita Sita Hare Guru Vaishnava Bhagavad Gita Shri Rupa Sanatan Bhatta Raguna Shri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasaraguna Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama. Shri Radha, Nila Madhava Radha, Nila Madhava Radhe. Jaya Jagannatha, Jaya Baladeva, Jaya Subhadrama, Jaya Sudarshan Chakra. Jaya Sitaram, Jaya Sitaram, Jaya Sitaram, Jaya Sitaram, Sitaram Jayo Lakshman Hanuman Jayo Lakshmi Narasingha Jayo Lakshmi Narasingha Lakshmi Narasingha Jayo Prahlad Maharaj Nitai Go Haribo 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 Nitai Go Haribo Haribo Jai Vishnu Paraparamsa Prabhajakacharya Sutara Sarasishima. His Divine Grace, Abhacharavinda Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. His Pratishta Viviti Samstapakacharya Vaishnav Siramani Patita Pavana Srila Prabhupada Ji Maharaj Ki Shri Gaurya Guru Varga Patiti Udhari Ki Jai. Shri Rupa Sanatana Bhatta Raghunath Sri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Das Guna Satguru Swami Prabhu Ki Jai. नामाचार्य शील हरिदास ठाकुर जी की जय अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासरि गौर भक्त वृंद की जय जय परम दयाल श्री नित्यानंद प्रभु की जय प्रेम नाम संकीर्तन एक जनाक प्रेम पुरुषोत्तम श्री सच्चिदानंद श्री गौरंग चैतन्य महाप्रभु गौर हरि महावृणावतार की जय गोलोकेर प्रमधान हरिनाम संकीर्तन यज्ञ की जय जुग धर्म हरे कृष्ण महामंत्र की जय प्रियंदांग ट्रांसलेंटल बुक डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन सेवा की जय श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण गोप गोपना राधा कुंड श्याम कुंड गिरिराज गोवर्धन की जय श्री ब्रज वृंदावन मथुर धाम की जय तेलोश विशेष राधा नील माधव की जय श्री मायापुर नवद्वीप एक चक्र धाम की जय राम करुण श्री गौर निताय की जय श्री पुरुषोत्तम चित्र जगन्नाथपुरी धाम की जय श्री श्री जगन्नाथ स्वामी बलदेव प्रभु सुभद्रा देवी सुदर्शन चक्र भगवान की जय भक्ति विघ्न विनाशन कृष्ण भगवान की जय सीताराम लक्ष्मण भक्त हनुमान जी की जय जगंगा माई जमुना माई की जय तुलसी महारानी वृंद देवी भक्ति देवी की जय श्री मथुरा रानी की जय समवेत भक्त वृंद की जय निताय गौरी प्रमानंदे हरि all glory to the assembly bodies, all glory to the assembly bodies, all glory to the assembly bodies, all glories, all glories, all glories to Shri Guru, Shri Gauranga.
Namaste Narashinhaya
Namaste Narashinhaya
Prahlada Lada Daine Hiranyakashipu Vakshaha Shilatankana Kalaye
Shilatankana Kalaye
Ito na Singha Parato na Singha
Itare Singha Paratane Singha
Yato Yato Yamitato na Singha
Jato Jato Jamitato ni Singha
Bahir na Singha Hriday na Singha
Kahini Singha Hridayeni Singha
Narsingha Mardim Sharanam Prapadye
Narasingha Madhin Saranam Prapade
Tava Karkamalavare Naka Maduta Shingha Dalita Hiranyakashipu Tano Bringam Peshavadrita Jaya Jagadisha Hare, Jaya Jagadisha Hare, Jaya Jagadisha Hare.
Abakara Kamala Bale Nakam Sarvata Singha Dalita Iranakasito Anabinga Isabadita Naravirupa Jagadisare Jagadisare Jai Jagadisare
Jaya Keshavadita Narahari Rupa Jaya Jagadisha Hare Jaya Jagadisha Hare Jaya Jagadisha Hare
Jaya Kesavadita Narare Rupa Jai Jagadisare Jai Jagadisare Jai Jagadisare
Jaya Lakshmi Narasingha Jaya Lakshmi Narasingha Lakshmi Narasingha Jaya Lakshmi Narasingha
Jaya Nisingare Jaya Nisingare Jaya Nisingare Jaya Nisingare
Jaya Narsingadev Jaya Narsingadev Narsingadev Jaya Narsingadev
Nisingare 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 Jaya Nisingare
Jaya Prahlad Maharaj Jaya Prahlad Maharaj Prahlad Maharaj Jaya Prahlad Maharaj
Jaya Prahlad Maharaj Prahlad Maharaj Prahlad Maharaj Jaya Prahlad Maharaj
Nrsimhadev Bhagavan ki jai Prahlad Maharaj ki jai
Jai
Premanandi Hari Bol
Shri Vrindai Tulasi Debai Priyayai Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Prade Devi Sattvatai Namo Namaha Vrindai Tulasi Debai Priyayai Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Prade Devi Sattvatai Namo Namaha Vrindayai Tulasi Devai Priyayai Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Prade Devi Sattvatai Namo Namaha Shrimati Tulasi Maharani Vrinda Devi ki
Namo Namaha Tulasi Krishna Preyasi Namo Namaha
तुलसी कृष्ण प्रेयसी नमो नमः
राधा कृष्ण सेवा पाबो अभिलाषी
राधा कृष्ण सेवा पाव अभिलाषी
राधा कृष्ण सेवा पाबो अभिलाषी
राधा कृष्ण सेवा पाव अभिलाषी
जे तो मार शरण लोय तारा वांछा पूर्ण होय
जे तुम्हारा शरणाला तारा वांछा पूर्ण
कृपा कोरी कोरो तारे वृंदावन वासी
तुम्हें कृपा करे करतरे वृंदावन वासी
मोरा अभिलाष विलास कुंज दियो वास
मोरा विलास कुंज दियोवा
नयने हेरी बो सदा जुगल रूप रासी
अमी नयने रे सदा जुगल रूप रासी
ए निवेदन धरो सखीरानुगत कोरो
हे निवेदन धर सखीरायनु कथाकार
सेवादि करो दिए करो निज दासी
सेवाया रे कर दिए कर निज दासी
दीना कृष्ण दास कोय ए नमोरा होय
दीना कृष्ण दास का नमोरा
श्री राधा गोविंदा प्रेमे सदा येन वासी
सेवायानि प्रेमे सदा येन वासी
श्री राधा गोविंदा प्रेमे सदा येन वासी
श्री राधा गोविंद प्रेमे सदा येन वासी
यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्महत्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्राणशन्ति प्रदक्षिणा पदे पदे
तानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्महत्यानि कनिष तानि तानि प्रणाशन्ति प्रदक्षिणा पदे पदे
यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्महत्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्राणशन्ति प्रदक्षिणा पदे पदे
तानि कानि च पापानि Brahma Hatyari Ganesha Tani Tani Prana Sante Pradakshina Pade Pade
Yani Kani Cha Papani Brahma Hatyadikani Cha Tani Tani Prana Shanti Pradakshina Pade Pade
Tani Kani Sapapani Brahma Hatyari Ganesha Tani Pradakshina Pade Pade
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Jaya Tulsi Maharani, Jaya Tulsi Maharani, Jaya Tulsi Maharani, Jaya Tulsi Maharani.
Jaya Tulsi Maharani, Jaya Tulsi Maharani, Tulsi Maharani, Jaya Tulsi Maharani.
Jaya Vrinda Devi, Jaya Vrinda Devi, Jaya Vrinda Devi, Jaya Vrinda Devi.
Jaya Vrinda Devi, Jaya Vrinda Devi, Jaya Vrinda Devi, Jaya Vrinda Devi.
Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol.
Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol. Shri Vrindayai Tulasi Devai Priyayai Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Prade Devi Sattvatai Namo Namaha. Vrindai Tulasi Devai Priyayai Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Prade Devi Sattvatai Namo Namaha. Vrindayai Tulasi Devai Priyayai Kesava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Prade Devi Sattvatai Namo Namaha. Shrimati Tulasi Maharani Vrinda Devi Ki Jai. Oh Tulasi, beloved Krishna, I bow before you again and again. My desire to obtain the service of Shri Radha and Krishna. Whoever takes shelter of his wishes fulfilled, bestow your mercy upon him, you make him a resident of Vrindavan. My desire is that you also give me a residence like the grove of Shri Vrindavan Dham. Thus within my vision I would always behold the beautiful pastimes of Radha and Krishna. I beg you to make me a follower carry damsels of right. Please give me the privilege of devotional service and make me your unmet servant. This very fallen and lowly servant of Krishna prays, may I always swim in love with Shri Radha and Govind, Shri Mati Tulasi Maharani, Vrinda Devi Ki Jai. Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Ki Jai. Shri Jayakari Vachandrika Saranam Vidyavati Jivanam Anandam Vivakanam Pratipadam Gunamita Saranam Sarvanasnam Param Param Yeti Krishna Sankirtanam Namamakari Sarvasati Prakritaniyamita Shmaranena Kala Etadrishi Prabhakritana Bhavamati Vinarati Sunitena Sarorati Tanisna Amana Manadena Kirtaya Krishna Krishna Chaitanya Glory to Shri Krishna Sankirtan, which cleanses the heart with the dust accumulated for years, and extinguishes the fire of conditional life of repeated birth and death. This Sankirtan movement is the primary indication for humanity at large, because it spreads the rays than a benediction moon. It is the life of all transcendental knowledge. It increases the ocean of transcendental bliss and enables us to fully test the nectar for which we always are anxious. O my Lord, your holy name alone can rain all benediction to living beings. And thus you have hundreds of millions of names like Krishna and Govinda. In these transcendental names, you have invested all your transcendental energies. It's not even hard and fast rules for chanting these names.
Out of kindness, you enable us to easily approach you by your holy names. But I am so unfortunate
I have no attraction for them. Once you chant the holy name of the Lord in a humble state of mind, thinking oneself Lord and strong in state, one should be more tolerant than a tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and should be ready to offer our respect to others. In such state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. O Almighty Lord, I have no desire to accumulate wealth, nor do I desire beautiful women, nor do I want any number of followers. I only want your cause that divorce must face birth after birth. O son of Maharaj Nanda Krishna, I am your eternal servitor. Yet some or other I'm falling in this ocean of birth and death. Please pick me up from this ocean of death and place me as one of the atoms at your lotus feet. O my Lord, or will my eyes will be decorated with tears of love, flowing constantly when I chant your holy name? Or will my voice choke up? And will the hairs of my body stand on the end of the recitation of your name? O Govinda, feeling your separation, I'm considering a moment to be like 12 years or more. Tears are flowing from my eyes like torrents of rain, and I feel all vacant in the world in your absence. I know no one but Krishna as my Lord, and he should remain so. Even if he handles me roughly by his embrace, or makes me broken-hearted by not being present before me, he is completely free to do anything and everything, for he is always my worshipful Lord, unconditionally sweet.
Shri Chaitanya Siksastra. Mr. Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Namaste Saraswati Devi Guru.
There are 10 offenses in matter of chanting the holy name of the Lord. They are as follows. 1.
Blasphemous devotees who dedicate their lives to propagating the holy names of the Lord.
2.
To consider the names of demigods, like Lord Shiva, Lord Brahma. To be pure and independent in the names of Lord Vishnu.
3.
to disobey the orders of the spiritual master, to blaspheme the Vedic literature or literature in pursuance of the Vedic version,
5. To
consider
consider
the
the
glories
glories
of
of chanting
chanting
Hare
Hare
Krishna
Krishna
to be
as
imagination. 6.
to give
Some
some
interpretation on the holy name of the Lord. 7. To
commit
commit
sinful activities on the strength of chanting the holy name
of the Lord. 8.
to consider the chanting of Hare Krishna as one of the auspicious ritualistic activities which are offered in the Vedas as fruitive activities or karma kanda,
9.
to instruct the faithless person about the glories of the holy name.
10.
Do
Do
not
have
complete faith in chanting
the
holy names
and
and
to
to maintain material attachments even after understanding so many instructions in this matter. It is also an offense to be inattentive while chanting. Every devotee who claims to be a Vaishnava must carefully guard against these 10 offenses in order to quickly achieve the desired success, Krishna Prema.
Now let us
So for our most humble obeisances of the Vaishnava devotees to the Lord, they are just like desired trees that can fulfill the desires of everyone, and they are full of compassion for the fallen conditioned souls. Vanchakalpatarabhyascha kripasindhabhyeva patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha Vaishnava Thakura ki jai. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutu Sumati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Tanai Namaste Saraswati Deve Guruvani Pracharani Nirvisesa Sunyavari Paskati Rasatu Srimad Bhagavatam Grantaraja Ki Jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Janmad Yasya Yato Niviyat Itaratas Charte Svavigyasvarat.
Janmad Yasayatam Vayaritaratascha Tirsvavigyasvara.
Tene Brahma Hridaya Adikavaye Munyatiyat Surayaha.
Tene Brahmardaya Adikavaye Mujantiza Suraya.
Tejo Varimidam Yata Vimi Mayo Yatra Trisargomesha.
Tejo Varimridam Jata Vinimayo Jatra Trisargam Rusya.
Damna Svena Sada Nirasta Kuhakam Satyam Param Dimahi.
Dhamna Svena Sada Nirastakuhakam Satyang Param Dimahi.
O my Lord, Shri Krishna, son of Vasudeva.
O my Lord Shri Krishna, son of
O
Vasudeva.
all-pervading personality of Godhead.
O all-pervading personality of
I
Godhead.
offer my respectful obeisances unto you.
I offer my respectful obeisances unto
I
you.
meditate upon Lord Shri Krishna because he is the absolute truth
I meditate upon Lord Shri Krishna because He is the absolute truth
and the primeval cause of all causes,
and the primeval cause of all
of the
causes,
creation, sustenance, and destruction of manifested universe.
of the creation, sustenance, and destruction of manifested universe.
He is directly and indirectly conscious of all
He is
manifestations,
directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations.
and he is independent because there's no other cause beyond him.
And He is independent because there is no other cause beyond Him.
It is he only who first imparted the Vedic knowledge unto the heart of Brahmaji,
It is He only who first imparted the Vedic knowledge into the heart of
the original
Brahmaji,
living being.
the original living being.
By him, even the great sages and demigods are placed into illusion.
By Him, even the great sages, demigods are placed into
As
illusion.
one is bewildered by the illusory representations
As one is bewildered by the illusory
of
representations
water seen on fire, on land seen on water.
of water in the fire, land in the water.
Only because of him do the material universes,
Only because of Him do the material universes,
temporarily manifested by the reactions of the three modes of nature,
temporarily manifested by the reaction of the three modes of nature,
appear factual although they are unreal.
appear factual, although they are
I
unreal.
therefore meditate upon him, Lord Shri Krishna,
I therefore meditate upon Him, Lord Shri Krishna,
who is eternally existent in the transcendental abode,
who is eternal existent to the transcendental
which is
abode,
forever free from the illusory representations of the material world.
which is forever free from the illusory representation of the material world.
I meditate upon him, for he is the absolute truth.
I meditate upon Him, for He is the absolute truth.
Dharma Projita Kaitravudra
Dharma Pujita Kaitavutra.
Paramoni Matsaranam Sita
Paramonyamasaranam.
Vedyam Vastavam Atra Vastu
Vedyam Vastavamastu Vastu.
Shivadam Tapatrayan Muni
Shivadam Taputrayom Ranam.
Shrimad Bhagavate Mahamuni Krite
Bhagavate Mahamuni
Kim va
Krite.
Pare Ishwaraha
Kim va Paririshvaraha.
Sadyo Hridi Avaruti Tetra
Sadyo Ridya Varidya Titra.
Kriti Bihi
Kritihi
Susu
Shushu Subhistatkanat.
completely rejecting all religious activities which are materially motivated.
Completely rejecting all religious activities which are materially
This
motivated.
Bhagavata Purana propounds the highest truth,
This Bhagavata Purana propounds the highest truth,
which is understandable by those devotees who are fully pure in heart.
which is understandable by those devotees are fully pure in the
The
heart.
highest truth is reality distinguished from illusion for the welfare of all.
The highest truth that reality is distinguished from illusion for the welfare of all.
Such truth uproots the threefold miseries.
Such a truth uproots the threefold miseries.
This beautiful Bhagavatam compiled by the great sage Vyasadeva in its maturity
This beautiful Bhagavatam compiled with great sage Vyasadev's maturity
is sufficient in itself for God realization.
is sufficient itself for God realization.
What is the need of any other scripture?
What is the need of the other scripture?
As soon as one, what is it? Yeah. As soon as one attentively and submissively hears the message of Bhagavatam,
As soon as one attentively and submissively hears the message of Bhagavatam,
by this culture of knowledge,
by this culture of
the
knowledge,
Supreme Lord is established within his heart.
the Supreme Lord is established within his heart.
Nigama kalpataro gamitam phalam.
Nigama kalpatoror galitam phalam,
Sukamukad amrita dravya samyutam.
Shukamukhad mrita drava
Pibata
sangitam,
Bhagavatam rasamalaya.
Pibata Bhagavatam
Muhur
rasamalaya,
aho rasika bhuvibhavaka.
Muraho Rasika Bhuvivavuka.
O expert and thoughtful man, relish Srimad Bhagavatam.
O expert and thoughtful men, relish my
The mature
Bhagavatam.
fruit of the desire through Vedic literature.
The mature fruit, the desire to the Vedic literature.
It emanated from lips of Sri Sukadeva
It
Goswami.
emanated from the lips of Sri Shukadev Goswami.
Therefore, this fruit has become even more tasteful.
Therefore, this food has become even more
Although
tasteful.
its nectarian juice was already relishable for all,
Although its nectarian juice was already relishable for all,
including liberated souls.
including liberated souls.
Shingatam Swakata Krishna.
Shrimbatam Swakata Krishna.
Punya Shravana Kirtana.
Punya Shravana Kirtanam.
Brilyantak Stohi Bhadrani.
Vidyantastohi Avadrani.
Vidu Noti Suhit Satam.
Vidu Noti Surit Satam.
To hear about Krishna from Vedic literature,
To hear about Krishna from the Vedic
or
literature,
to hear from him directly through the Bhagavad Gita,
or to hear from him directly through the Bhagavad
is
Gita,
itself righteous activity.
it is self-righteous
And
activity.
for one who hears about Krishna,
For one who hears about Krishna,
Lord Krishna is dwelling in everyone's heart,
Lord Krishna is dwelling within everyone's heart,
acts as a best wishing friend,
acts as the best wishing
and
friend.
purifies the devotee who constantly engages in hearing of him.
The devotee who constantly engages in hearing of him.
Nasta presu abhadresu
Nasta Praisha Bhadrishu
nityam bhagavata sevaya
Nityam Bhagavata Seva
bhagavati samasloke
Bhagavati Uttama
bhaktir
Shloke
bhavati naistaki.
Bhakti Bhavati Nastiki.
In this way, a devotee naturally develops his dormant transcendental knowledge.
In this way, the devotee naturally develops his dormant transcendental knowledge.
As he hears more about Krishna from the Bhagavatam
As he hears more about Krishna from the Bhagavatam
and from the devotee,
and from the devotees,
he becomes fixed in the devotional service of the Lord.
he becomes fixed in the devotional service of the Lord.
Kadarajastumo bhava
Tadarajastamo Bhava
kamalobadayasche
Kamalobadayascha
chete etaranavidam
Chaitaitaranavidam
tam sattve prasidati.
Stitam Sadve Prasidati.
By development of devotional service,
By development of devotional service,
one becomes freed from the modes of passion and ignorance,
one becomes freed from the modes of passion of ignorance,
and thus material lust and avarice are diminished.
and thus material lust and avarice are diminished.
Evam prasana manaso
Evam prasanamana so
Bhagavad Bhakti Yogataha
Bhagavad Bhakti Yogata
Bhagavad Tattva Vijnanam
Bhagavad Tattva Vijnanam
Sangasya Jayate.
Mukta Sangasa Jayate.
When these impurities are wiped away,
When these impurities are wiped
the
away,
candidate remains steady in his position of pure
the body
goodness,
remains steady in its position of pure goodness.
becomes enlivened by devotional service,
Becomes enlivened by devotional
and
service,
understands the science of God perfectly.
and understands the science of God perfectly.
Vidyate Hridaya Granti
Vidyate Rudaya Granthi
Chidyante Sarva Samsaya
Chidyante Sarva Samshaya
Siyante Chasya Karmani
Yante Chasya Karmani
Drishta Evat Manishwari.
Krista Evad
Thus
Manishwari.
Bhakti Yoga serves the heart, not a material
Thus the
affection,
Bhakti Yoga serves the heart of the material affection,
and enables one to come at once to the stage of a Samsayam Samagram,
and enables one to come at once to the stage of Assumption of Samagramam,
understanding of the Supreme Absolute Truth Personality of Godhead.
understanding the supreme absolute truth personality of Godhead.
Therefore, only by hearing from Krishna or from his devotee in Krishna consciousness
Therefore, only by hearing from Krishna or from his devotees Krishna consciousness
can one understand the science of
can one understand
Krishna.
the science of Krishna.
Shri Guru Vastika prayers. The spiritual master is receiving benediction from the ocean of mercy.
The spiritual master receiving benediction from the ocean of mercy.
Just as a cloud pours water on a forest fire to extinguish
Just
it,
as God pours water on the forest fire to extinguish
so the spiritual master delivers the materially afflicted world by extinguishing the blazing fire of material existence.
so the spiritual master delivers the material afflicted world by extinguishing the blazing fire of material existence.
I offer my respectful obeisance to the lotus feet of such a spiritual master.
Offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual
who is an
master,
ocean of auspicious qualities,
who is in the ocean of auspicious qualities,
chanting the holy name, dancing in ecstasy,
chanting the holy name, dancing in ecstasy,
singing and playing musical instruments.
singing and playing musical
The
instruments.
spiritual master is always gladdened by the Sankirtan movement of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu.
The spiritual master is always gladdened by the Sankirtan movement of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu,
Because he is relishing the mellows of pure devotion within his mind.
because he's relishing the mellows of pure devotion within his mind.
Sometimes his hair stands on end.
Sometimes bodily hairs stand on end.
He feels quivering in his body,
He feels quivering in his body,
and tears flow from his eyes like waves.
and tears flow from his ears like waves.
I offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master.
I offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of such a
The
spiritual
spiritual master is
master.
always engaged in the temple worship of Shri Radha and Krishna.
The spiritual master is always engaged in the temple worship of Shri Radha and
He
Krishna.
also engages his disciples in such worship.
He also engages his disciples in such worship.
They dress the deities in beautiful clothes and ornaments,
They dress the deities in beautiful clothes and ornaments,
clean their temple,
clean their temple,
and perform other similar worship of the Lord.
and perform other similar worship of the Lord.
I offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master.
I offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual
The
master.
spiritual master is always offering Krishna 4 kinds of delicious food.
The spiritual master is always offering Krishna 4 kinds of delicious food.
Analyzes that which is licked, chewed, drunk, and sucked.
Analyzed as the witches choose, drink, and suck.
When the spiritual master sees that the devotees are satisfied by eating Bhagavad Prasada,
When the spiritual master sees that devotees are satisfied by eating Bhagavad Prasad,
he is satisfied.
he is satisfied.
I offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master.
I offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual
The
master.
spiritual master is always eager to hear and chant about the unlimited conjugal pastimes of Radhika and Madhava.
The spiritual master is always eager to hear and chant about the unlimited conjugal pastime of Shri Radha
And their qualities, names, and forms.
and about the qualities, names, and
The
forms.
spiritual master aspires to relish these at every moment.
The spiritual master aspires to relish these at every moment.
I offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master.
I offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master.
The spiritual master is very dear
The spiritual master is very dear
because he is expert in assisting the gopis,
because he is expert in assisting the gopis,
who at different times make different tasteful arrangements
who at different times make different tasteful arrangements
for the perfection of Radha and Krishna's conjugal loving affairs
for the perfection of Radha and Krishna's conjugal loving affairs
within the groves of Vrindavan.
within the groves of
I offer my
Vrindavan.
most humble obeisances unto the lotus
I
feet of
offer
such
my
a
most humble
spiritual master.
obeisance unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master.
The spiritual master is to be honored as much as the Supreme Lord,
The spiritual master is to be honored as much as the Supreme Lord
because he is the most confidential servitor of the Lord.
because he is the most confidential servant of the Lord.
This is acknowledged in all revealed scriptures
This is acknowledged in all the
and
scriptures
followed by all authorities.
and followed by all authorities.
Therefore, I offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master,
Therefore, I offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual
who is a
master,
bona fide representative of Shri Hari Krishna.
who is a bona fide representative of Shri Hari
By
Krishna.
the mercy of the spiritual master, one receives the benediction of Krishna.
By the mercy of the spiritual master, one receives the benediction of Krishna.
Without the grace of the spiritual master, one cannot make any advancement.
Without the grace of the spiritual master, one cannot make any advancement.
Therefore, I should always remember and praise the spiritual master.
Therefore, I should always remember and praise the spiritual master.
At least 3 times a day, I should offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of my spiritual master.
At least 3 times a day, I should offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of my spiritual master.
Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 4, verse 23. Utar Mahadbir Gaima Puro Vibur Nirmaya Sete Yadamusu Purushaha
Nirmaya sete yadamushu purusha.
Bhunkte Gunan Soda Sasoda Sasatmakaha
Bhunte gunan Sadhusha sadashatmaka.
Solang Krisista Bhagavan Vachamsi Me.
Solang Kushista Bhagavan Vachamsi Me.
Translation by Srila Prabhupada. May the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who enlivens the materially created bodies of the elements by lying down within the universe, and who, in his Purusha incarnation, causes the living being to be subjected to the 16 divisions of material modes, which are his generator, be pleased to decorate my statements. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. As a fully dependent devotee, Sukadeva Goswami, unlike a mundane man who is proud of his own capability, invokes the pleasure of the personality of Godhead so that his statements may be successful and be appreciated by the hearers. The devotee always thinks of himself as instrumental for anything successfully carried out, and he declines to take credit for anything done by himself. The godless atheist wants to take all credit for activities, not knowing that even a blade of grass cannot move without the sanction of the Supreme Spirit, the personality of Godhead. Sukadeva Goswami therefore wants to move by the direction of the Supreme Lord, who inspired Brahma to speak the Vedic wisdom. The truths described in the Vedic literatures are not theories of mundane imagination, nor are they fictitious, as the less intelligent class of men sometimes think. The Vedic truths are all perfect descriptions of the factual truth without any mistake or illusion, and Sukadeva Goswami wants to present the truths of creation not as a metaphysical theory of philosophical speculation, but as the actual facts and figures of the subject, since he would be dictated to by the Lord exactly in the same manner as Brahmaji was inspired. As stated in the Bhagavad Gita 15:15, the Lord is himself the father of the Vedanta knowledge, and it is he only who knows the factual purport of the Vedanta philosophy. So there is no greater truth than the principles of religion mentioned in the Vedas. Such Vedic knowledge or religion is disseminated by authorities like Sukadeva Goswami because he is a humble devotional servitor of the Lord, who has no desires to become a self-appointed interpreter without authority. That is the way of explaining the Vedic knowledge, technically known as the parampara system of descending process. The intelligent man can see without mistake that any material creation, whether one's own body or a fruit or flower, cannot beautifully grow up without the spiritual touch. The greatest intelligent man of the world, or the greatest man of science, can present everything very beautifully only insofar as the spirit life is there, or in so much as the spiritual touch is there. Therefore, the source of all truths is the Supreme Spirit, and not gross matter as wrongly conceived by the gross materialist. We get information from the Vedic literature that the Lord himself first entered the vacuum of the material universe, and thus all things gradually develop one after another. Similarly, the Lord is situated as localized Paramatma in every living individual being. Hence, everything is done by him very beautifully. The 16 principal creative elements, namely earth, water, fire, air, sky, and the 11 sense organs, first developed from the Lord himself and were thereby shared by the living entities. Thus, the material elements were created for the enjoyment of the living entities. The beautiful arrangement behind all material manifestations is therefore made possible by the energy of the Lord, and the individual living entity can only pray to the Lord to understand it properly. Since the Lord is the supreme entity, different from Sukadeva Goswami, the prayer can be offered to him. The Lord helps the living entity to enjoy material creation, but he is aloof from such false enjoyment. Sukadev prays for the mercy of the Lord, not only for being helped personally in presenting the truth, but also for helping others to whom he would like to speak. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. May the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who enlivens the materially created bodies of the elements by lying down within the universe, and who, in his Purusha incarnation, causes the living being to be subjected to the 16 divisions of material modes, which are his generator, be pleased to decorate my statements. Well, this is a statement of extreme humility by Sukadeva Goswami. And this is the spiritual process. The whole purpose of Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam is to convince us that we are not the greatest thing that ever happened in the history of man. We are we are an insignificant servant of the Lord, but the Lord is so kind that he's willing to have a personal relationship with us if we accept the humble position of his eternal servant. So this is almost impossible for most people, because they're so puffed up with the false ego that to admit that there's someone greater than themselves is like poison. However, material nature, under the control of Durga Mata, gradually defeats all these great, great personalities in history. After a few years, they are forgotten completely. So, therefore, the devotee doesn't fall into that trap of the false ego, because the devotee, first of all, understands, I am not this body. This body is a temporary thing. I am rather represented by the consciousness in this body. And that's the symptom of the soul. Every evening we go to sleep, but when we wake up, we remember, oh, I have duties to do, I have to do this, I have to do that, and we begin our activity during the day. And then nighttime comes, we get tired, and we want to go to sleep. So all these things are happening because we have a soul, not because there's a body and there are the three modes of material nature that force us to do things. We're able to do things because of the existence of the soul and the soul's relationship with Krishna, who is the super soul. So this is all transcendental knowledge that the devotee accepts, but the materialists never accept this. So how do you think it is possible for the materialist to ever be happy, to ever be satisfied, to ever be free of sinful activities? Not possible. Because they don't have the right understanding of the living entity and its real position in relationship to the material world and to Krishna and to others. So, the beginning of the change of heart is when we begin to develop association with pure devotees. And pure devotee is someone who, in spite of all situations, always continues in devotional service. That's one symptom of a pure devotee, their steadiness in devotional service. There are other symptoms, but that's a good indicator right there, that the good devotee is not bewildered or agitated or discouraged by current events. Current events, there's so many things that are bad and there's some things that are good, but people are always, their happiness is always interrupted by some freak event or happening, like a car accident, sickness, robbery, and the person you voted for loses is voted out of office. And all these things, disturb people, and they're always off balance, and they don't really have time to associate with pure devotees. They don't have time to hear the discourses of genuine devotees. But they're very interested in politics and news and sports and stock quotes and in pornography and all these other things. So they are completely under the control of Maya. And that means that they are in anxiety and they are miserable. And sometimes they're elated with temporary material success, and at other times they're completely devastated by material failure. So that is not a lifestyle. That is torture. And unless we wake up and hear transcendental knowledge. So this transcendental knowledge begins, Prabhupada in the previous purport says, the Vedic knowledge was therefore first impregnated within Brahma. So why does he use the word impregnated? Because impregnated usually means something goes into you, right? Like a husband may impregnate his wife, and then a child is born, right? Well, Krishna impregnated the Vedic knowledge into the heart of Brahmaji. So that's why we say every morning that Brahma received knowledge of Krishna through his heart. Tene Brahma Hridaya Adhikavaye Bhuyanti Atsuraya. So, therefore, this knowledge is first impregnated within Brahma, and it appears that Brahma distributed the Vedic knowledge. Brahma is undoubtedly the speaker of the Vedic knowledge, but actually he was inspired by the Lord to receive such transcendental knowledge as it directly descends from the Lord. Now, why is Prabhupada writing this? Because there are people who think that Brahma is the Supreme Personality of God, and that's why, right? I mean, now we're going to go through a lot of misconceptions that are going to be dispelled in the previous verse yesterday. It says, Brahma is undoubtedly the speaker of Vedic knowledge, but actually he was inspired by the Lord to receive such transcendental knowledge as it directly descends from the Lord. The Vedas are therefore called aporusheya, or not imparted by any created being. Yeah, it's originally spoken by Krishna to Brahma. Before the creation of the Lord was there, Narayana Paro Vyaktat. So that's an important verse that is spoken by Lord Shiva in his introduction to his commentary on the Bhagavad Gita. And it says, Narayana Paro Vyaktat Andam Avyakta Sambhavam Andasyantas Trime Loka Saptadvipa Chamedini. And this is the Bhasya of Sankaracharya. So basically he's saying that the Lord existed before material creation. And therefore, the words spoken by the Lord are vibrations of transcendental sound. Now, every day on the television, on the radio, on the internet, we're hearing vibrations of mundane sound. Right? Politics, sports, stock quotes, business, and this thing and that thing. But there is that, and that's called prakrita sounds within the material world. However, there's aprakrita. So Prabhupada says the physicists can deal only with the prakrita sound, or sound vibrated in the material sky, and therefore we must know that the Vedic sounds recorded in symbolic expressions cannot be understood by anyone within the universe unless and until one is inspired by the vibration of supernatural aprakrita sound, which descends in the chain of disciplic succession from the Lord to Brahma, from Brahma to Narada, from Narada to Vyasa, and so on. So, therefore, it's important every day that we should hear Prabhupada speaking. We should listen to his classes. There, we are sure that we're receiving transcendental sound, vibration. And hear Prabhupada chanting Hare Krishna, and hear his explanations of so many verses in Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita. We're very lucky to have that. Imagine if there was one recording of Jesus Christ speaking the Sermon on the Mount. How much do you think that would be worth? It'd be worth thousands and thousands of dollars just to get one copy, right? And then eventually, if they make it cheaper by printing billions of copies, then the price will go down. But it would be cherished. What if there was one tape of Muhammad speaking? Imagine that, right? But we have over 3,000 recordings of Prabhupada speaking. That is such a treasure chest of nectar. And it's all transcendental sound, because his only purpose is to glorify Krishna. So therefore, we should be hearing that every day. At least once a day we should hear Prabhupada giving lecture, Prabhupada chanting, because that is transcendental sound, aprakrita. So, and therefore we must know that the Vedic sounds recorded in symbolic expressions cannot be understood by anyone within the universe unless and until one is inspired by the vibration of supernatural aprakrita sound, which descends in the chain of disciplic succession from the Lord to Brahma, from Brahma to Narada, from Narada to Vyasa, and so on. No mundane scholar can translate or reveal the true import of the Vedic mantras or hymns. Now, shouldn't we explain this to our kids, the difference between mundane sound and transcendental sound, or as Prabhupada says, supernatural sound? Shouldn't they understand that everything they're hearing in schools and the internet, it's all mundane sound, and it's all misleading. It's to take our mind away from Krishna. Anything that takes our mind away from Krishna is called Maya. So therefore, we should teach our kids what is Maya and what is Krishna. What is mundane sound? What is transcendental sound? What is devotional service? And what is selfish service? These are the things that we have to learn, first ourselves, and then we can impart it to our kids. The fact that we haven't learned it ourselves is proven by the fact that we're not able to communicate it to our children. And this is what happened in the last 2 generations in India. The parents and grandparents have not been able to communicate this transcendental sound vibrations to their kids. Therefore, the kids are becoming karmis. Although their parents are or grandparents were actual devotees, you see. Because if you cannot explain it if you cannot explain it and convince another person of the value of transcendental sound, it's because you haven't understood it yourself properly. And you want to simply saying words that have no potency. One has to strictly follow the regulative principles and regularly hear a transcendental sound every day, at least once or twice or 3 times a day, in order to have potency in their words. To be able to convince a person to become Krishna conscious, you have to be potent. You have to have the Shakti. But only a person who strictly follows and is regularly hearing and chanting and serving will have that Shakti, that power to convince other people. Say, all right, you can go along your whole life following Krishna consciousness, and that's good. But to be able to convince others, that's the sign of a potent devotee. So, just going along is fine. It's good for oneself. But the real goal that Prabhupada wanted to achieve was to have an army of preachers who were all capable of convincing others to take up Krishna consciousness. He wanted an army of preachers. And it didn't matter whether they were sannyasis, vanaprasthas, grihastas, or brahmacharis, brahmacharinis. It didn't matter. As long as they had the Shakti. And you get that Shakti, that power, by strictly following the regulative principles and regulative hearing and chanting. That should be the number one priority in our life. And everything else, we have to learn to prioritize in our life what is the most important thing, what is the second most important thing, third most important thing, fourth most important thing, and what is also rubbish. That should not be anything for us. So, in the prayer in Lord Bhisma Pitamaha says, Esavai Bhagavan Sakshat Adyo Narayana Pumam Mohayan Mayaya Lokam Gudas Charati Vishnisu. He's telling Yudhisthira Maharaj and all the other great sages that are assembled at his passing away, he says, this Sri Krishna is no other than the inconceivable original personality of Godhead. He is the first Narayana, the supreme enjoyer, but he is moving amongst the descendants of King Vrishni, just like one of us, and he is bewildering us with his self-created energy. This is a major statement by a Mahajan, Bhisma Pitamaha. But actually, Lord Brahma says the same thing also in the 10th chapter, 10th canto, 14th chapter, 14th verse, where he says, Narayanas tvam na hi sarva dehinam atmasya disakila loka shaksi Narayano nagam narabul jalayanat tachchapi satyam natavaiva maya. He says, are you not the original Narayana, O Supreme Controller? Brahmaji speaking. Since you are the soul of every embodied being and the eternal witness of all created realms. Indeed, Lord Narayana is your expansion. And he is called Narayana because he is the generating source of the primeval water of the universe. He is real, not a product of your illusory Maya. So, now, the question comes, and this is an existential question, who do we believe? This clearly says, this is clearly a statement by Lord Brahma. He says, Lord Narayana is your expansion. Now, there are people that say that Krishna is expanded from Narayana, and they insist on that ferociously, actually dogmatically. This word dogmatically is a very important word. It means that you express an opinion very strongly, but it also means, in the general sense now, that it's a closed-minded person who's 100% sure of his or her beliefs, despite evidence to the contrary. That this is evidence to the contrary. This is a statement like by Brahma and a statement by Bhisma Pitamaha. Both of them are Mahajans. So which authority are we going to accept? That's the fundamental question in Krishna consciousness. And it's a fundamental question as far as knowledge goes. Knowledge is something you begin to accept when you accept an authority. If you don't think someone is an authority, just like for 4 years, the liberal media was trying to convince everyone that Trump is not an authority. He's a nonsense. Don't believe anything he says. He's a liar. He's this, he's that. And, he colluded with the Russians. He's a puppet of Putin. All these things. They were trying to convince people you can't believe one word that comes out of his mouth. You see. And eventually, it worked. If you say bad things about a person, something sticks. That's a saying in English. You spread a lie and you keep spreading it. Eventually, people say, "Well, it can't be completely false." I hear it every day. There must be something to it. That's why the Nazi propagandist who was working for Hitler, Goebbels, he said, if you're going to tell a lie, tell a big one. Don't tell a little one. And keep repeating it. Eventually, people will believe it. See? So this is the technique. You have to understand these techniques that are used by the demons. It's not just the Nazis. This technique was started way back in history. Just like we say, the cancel culture. It's nothing new. It was started by the Mayavadis. They canceled Goloka Vrindavan. They canceled Nanda Maharaj and Yasoda Mai and the Gopis. They canceled Krishna. Right? This happened millions of years ago. Even in the time of Lord Ramachandra, there were impersonalists. In fact, one impersonalist tried to convince Lord Ramachandra that he didn't have to follow his father's order, that he could ignore what his father said about going into exile. And Lord Rama became very upset. He said, "What kind of nonsense are you talking?" And he was basically he was an impersonalist, or he was speaking like an impersonalist. And Lord Rama became very upset with him. And then Vasishtha Muni had to calm Lord Rama and tell him, "Look, he didn't really mean it. He's just trying to convince you to go back to Ayodhya. Please excuse it." So you see, this Mayavad philosophy has been there right from the beginning, almost from the beginning of time. And it's the ultimate cancel culture. It's the ultimate misconception. But if you keep repeating a lie over and over again, and other people repeat it also over and over again, eventually the dummies begin to believe it. And they ignore just like it says, despite evidence to the contrary. Now, what is evidence? Evidence is a statement of acharyas who are simply repeating what Krishna originally stated. So Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, "Ham sarvasya prabhu matak sarvam pravartate iti matva bhajante man buddha bhava samanvitaha." 10th chapter, 8th verse in Bhagavad Gita. He says that he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He says, "I'm the source of all spiritual and material worlds. Everything emanates from me. The wise who perfectly know this engage in my devotional service and worship me with all their hearts." So, who are we going to believe? And, okay, let's say we believe this, but can we convince our children that this is true? Can we convince another person that this is true? Right? That's the test of the devotee, that they can become a convincing, credible person in the eyes of mundane people, and that they begin to believe the Vedic knowledge. So that's the beginning of spiritual life. And it all depends on whether we accept Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead or not. But there's plenty of evidence that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Okay, so then, so Lord Brahma, he says, it's the 10th canto, 14th chapter, 14th verse. In the purport, it says, in the Chaitanya Charitamrita Adi Lila chapter 2, text 30, Srila Prabhupada comments on this verse as follows. This statement, which is from Srimad Bhagavatam 10.14.14, was spoken by Lord Brahma in his prayers to Lord Krishna after the Lord had defeated him by displaying his mystic powers. Brahma had tried to test Lord Krishna to see if he was really the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Playing as a cowherd boy, Brahma stole all the other boys and their calves from the pasturing grounds. But when he returned to the pastures, he saw that all the boys and calves were still there, for Lord Krishna had created them all again. When Brahma saw this mystic power of Lord Krishna's, and now Krishna's only like 5-6 years old, right? Maybe 7 years old. Brahma admitted defeat and offered prayers to the Lord, addressing him as the proprietor and seer of everything in the creation and as the super soul who is within each and every living entity and is dear to all. So when it says he's the seer of everything, that's a very significant statement. He is the real seer, and we are the seen, as is the material world. That should be our understanding of things, not that we are the seer. If we are the seer, that means we are the supreme person. And everything that we see, according to our speculative and misconceived thoughts, is the truth. That's if we are the seer. But if we accept that Krishna is the seer, and we are the seen, then we are subordinate. And Krishna is the ultimate seer. Therefore, whatever he says, that's what we should believe, because he's seeing correctly. But if we accept that we are the seer, then we'll believe whatever we see. And we'll doubt anybody else that says that they are the seer and what they see. You see, this is a very important point. Krishna is the ultimate seer of everything. Therefore, we have to accept Krishna's opinion of things. Yeah. So then it says, that Lord Krishna is Narayana, the father of Brahma, because Lord Krishna's plenary expansion, Garbhodaksha Vishnu, after placing himself on the Garbha ocean, created Brahma from his own body. Mahavishnu in the causal ocean and Kshirodaksha Vishnu, the super soul in everyone's heart, are also transcendental expansions of the supreme truth, or Krishna. In his commentary on this verse, Sri Sanatana Goswami, so now you see, these are Prabhupada's disciples writing this purport, because we're in the 10th canto. They're quoting what Prabhupada says. Now they're going to quote what Sanatana Goswami says. Has elaborately explained the expansion of the Vishnu or Narayana incarnations from the original form of Godhead, Lord Sri Krishna. The essence is that although Lord Brahma was born from Lord Narayana, Brahma now understands that Narayana is himself a mere expansion of the original personality of Godhead, Lord Sri Krishna. Now, there are so many people saying, no, Narayana is the source of Krishna. Now, who are we going to believe? That's the point. So we don't only have the Mayavadis who are spewing out nonsense and misinformation. We also have Vaishnavas that are spewing out nonsense and misinformation. And the question is, who are we going to believe? Therefore, we have our acharyas. And we accept also the Alvars as our acharyas and Ramanujacharya as our acharyas. Why? Because they have the same opinion expressed by Sanatana Goswami and Jiva Goswami and Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, Maharaj and Srila Prabhupada, that Krishna is the original Supreme Personality of Godhead, the origin of everything. So therefore, those people who say, no, Narayana is the Supreme God, well, that's a right statement, but he's the source of Krishna. That's a wrong statement, you see. So we accept that Narayana is the Supreme Personality of Godhead because he's a plenary expansion of Krishna. But Krishna has expanded Narayana. It's not the other way. So, therefore, the Alvars themselves were, if you read the prayers by King Kalushakar, the Mukunda Malashotram, he clearly says Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. You hear the prayers by Goda Devi. She clearly says in the Tirupava that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. There's no doubt about it, right? But yet, in spite of the evidence that's incontrovertible, people still say that Narayana is the source of Krishna. You see, so this is called dogmatism. This is dogmatic. That a person is so close-minded that they're 100% sure of their beliefs, despite evidence to the contrary. They reject that evidence. They reject the statement of Brahma. They reject the statement of Bhisma. They reject the statement of Krishna himself. So, see, unless we become cognizant of these type of deviations, that is a weak point in our own convictions. Okay, so therefore I'll stop right there. This is every time I'm speaking about the previous purport, because there's so much information in these purports, it's hard to cover it in one session, and I don't want to speak past like maximum 45 minutes. So we'll stop right there and continue tomorrow. Are there any questions? Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Gaura Premanandi Haribol. So I have some good news. Yesterday we purchased another farm. In Arlington. It's beautiful. 47 beautiful acres. And the whole place looks like Tirupati. It's surrounded by mountains. It looks exactly like Tirupati. Right? And it's going to be a big, big thing once we start developing it. 47 acres. It's 5 times bigger than Auburn and Redmond. Yeah. And it's a dairy. It's only it's 45 minutes from the Redmond farm. 1 hour from here. Yeah. So it's very close, very, very close. You can commute there, live there and commute to Seattle every day. Yeah. North. Haribol, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Yesterday was a very good day. We got permission to have Ratha Yatra in Bellevue. and other things too. A whole bunch of good things happened yesterday. So the 15th of June, 2021 was a very successful day for Krishna consciousness. Haribol.